All right, good evening, everybody. We are here, me and Amanda. I'm David, by the way. Chapter 11, right? 12.
12.
I'm in the wrong chapter tonight for some reason.
Maybe we need to go back to 11.
Maybe we need to go back through 11 again. Yeah, I
No,
don't
we
know.
don't.
Job's fourth speech is what it's called, right?
Job, mine says Job's reply to so far.
Job, yep, reply to so far.
Yeah.
All right. My chapter's not really broken up. Is yours?
Yes.
Well, why don't you read for us tonight? Because mine's not broken up at all.
Okay, where does it stop? Yeah, alright.
Where were you stopping at?
I'm stopping at 6.
6, all
Verse
right.
6. Alright, then Job answered, "No doubt you are the people, and wisdom will die with you. But I also have a mind like you. I am not inferior to you. Who doesn't know the things you are talking about? I am a laughing stock to my friends by calling on God who answers me. The righteous and upright man is a laughing stock. The one who is at ease holds calamity in contempt and thinks it is prepared for those whose feet are slipping. The tents of robbers are safe, and those who trouble God are secure. God holds them in his hands."
Okay. So, how to phrase this? My Bible reads a little differently. It starts out, "You people really know everything, don't you?"
Yeah, I had to read how NLT translated it.
I get the impression Job's a little ticked off at this point.
Do you blame him?
I mean, you know, these are his friends, and like, "You people know everything, don't you?" And when you die, wisdom will die with you. Why would Job make that comment?
I think he's been a little sarcastic.
I think he's being very
Really?
sarcastic, yeah.
I was being nice.
Do you think he's really calling their words wisdom?
No.
What's he really trying to say here?
They're foolish.
Stupidity.
The what?
Your stupidity.
Their stupidity, their foolishness. Yeah, I think you're right. He doesn't see it as wisdom. Now we know why, because he knows he didn't do anything. So their wisdom is foolishness. It's kind of like if you want to bake a cake and you put it on top of the burner. It's still up the stove, right? But you're not going to bake a cake. You're going to boil a cake. It's going to be a goopy, burnt mess when you're done. And, you know, I think that's the way he's looking at it. Your wisdom, your words are true, but they're just on the wrong side at the moment. You know, instead of putting them in the oven, you put them on top. So he really doesn't think very much of their wisdom. And then he gets into what he knows. I like this part. I know a few things too. I should have wore my shirtless and just assume I'm always right, because that's what he's saying. And you're no better than I am. Who doesn't know these things you've been saying? Yet my friends laugh at me, for I call on God and expect an answer. I am a just and blameless man, yet they laugh at me. All right, this is like the umpteenth time he said he's a just and blameless man. He's told all 4 friends, 3 friends, how many have we had so far? 3. 3 friends, the same thing. He's blameless. He hasn't done anything wrong that he can realize. And all they're doing is laughing at him. How would that make you feel?
All right.
What would you do, Terry?
If I go to somebody's tail.
I'd probably tell him to leave. You can go back home now.
Well, they can leave after I beat them up.
Job's not that kind of man, though.
Blameless.
Job wouldn't be blameless anymore.
I was blameless for kicking me butt.
Well, something you gotta realize too, Job's on top of an ash heap,
Yeah.
and he's covered in
Sores.
leprosy, sores,
Hey,
boils, and
boils.
Yeah.
Well, they probably had it right.
So they would probably get far away before you could
They,
get to
they,
them.
they probably would. Look at what Job says.
They're
Yet my,
probably
fri-
laughing at you from afar anyway.
yeah. Yet my friends laugh at me, for I call on God and expect an answer.
See, she read it, he got answers.
What does yours say there?
Mine says
Verse 3, 4.
4. I am a laughing stock to my friends by calling on God who answers me.
See, in her version, he answers. In your version, he expects an
An
answer.
answer, yes. What's the difference?
Well, there, and well, to me, the difference is he's getting answered, and that one, and this one he's not. He's expecting an answer, but he hasn't received it yet.
Okay.
Or maybe he's getting answers he doesn't agree with.
What do you think there, Amanda? Is he getting answered or expecting an answer?
Are we speaking figuratively or literally?
I don't know. That's the question.
Well, now if you look at the way that it's written in my context, it's got by calling on God separated by commas. So in my sentence, who answers me could actually be like the tail end of the first part of the sentence,
Could be. Okay.
meaning that his friends are the ones who answer him. But going by NLT, it's he's expecting an answer from God, and in a sense. Have you ever asked God a question,
Lots of times.
not get a response,
Lots of times.
but while you're sitting there waiting on a response, in a sense, he's answered you?
Yes. We also have to remember, Job does believe somewhat what his friend says is true. So his life experiences at this point would be taken as an answer from God. All the suffering he's facing is an answer.
But you also have to look too, after the fact of the suffering, he's sitting there and he's asking God, what have I done? And God's not saying
He's
anything.
not saying anything. I think
So in
that's
a
the
sense,
answer
God
he's
is
expecting.
saying, you haven't done nothing.
Right.
I mean,
And I think that's the answer he keeps expecting is, why, tell me what I've done.
right.
And, so I think both translations are probably true in a sense. Because he is being answered by their tradition of bad things happen to you because God's punishing you. But he's asking the question, but what have I done? I don't know what I did. Answer me, and God's being silent.
Well, God's basically saying you haven't done anything.
There's nothing to tell him.
Yeah.
God can't, now God could say you haven't done anything wrong. Why wouldn't he do that?
Because I think that's where our trust comes into play.
Ooh, faith and trust. So we just have to trust that when we don't get the answer we're looking for, that everything's okay.
I don't think trust that everything's okay. Just trust that God's in control.
Or look that he's giving you an answer, but you just didn't get it. Like, he's sending these so-called friends, and the answer is basically you haven't done anything wrong. Because if they use their lot, well, yeah, if you use their logic, he hasn't done anything wrong. So apparently, Job's asking the wrong question.
Good point. He is asking the wrong question. Instead of what have I done wrong, maybe you should be asking, why is this happening to me? Because there is a difference. If he asks God, why is this happening to me, maybe God would say, well, me and Satan's got a battle going on. You're just
Like,
calling
make
me.
an example of you.
He's
What
not
am I
making an
supposed to
example.
learn from this?
What am I supposed to learn from this? Yeah. Oftentimes we do ask God the wrong question, and then we don't get an answer. We get frustrated, but when that happens, we probably should ask different questions. Remember when you were a teenager and you wanted to do something? You could ask the question one way and get told no, or ask it a different way and get told yes. Now why?
You asked it slightly differently.
Because you asked it differently, you phrased it, you crouched it differently, you put it in different context. You know, it's the difference of, can I go out with my friends tonight? No. Versus, you know, Jenny Sue's coming over and her mom's taking us to the mall, is that okay? Well, sure. Same thing.
I don't know who
Or
Jenny
can I
Sue
go,
is.
can I
didn't
go
talk
to a
her mom.
party versus can I go to my friend's house?
You're right,
Stay
yeah.
over?
Exactly. Can I go to this party or can I go to, you know, this house?
Mine wasn't always how you worded it. Mine was always which parent you asked.
Which
first.
parents you ask? Well, Joe
I
told
knew
me-
if I asked my daddy, he'd say, if it's okay with your mama. So then I'd go ask mama, and she'd be like, well, if your daddy says it's okay with him, I'm not gonna be the bad parent.
Unfortunately,
I didn't know that.
unfortunately, Job only has one parent to ask.
I had never asked, I just did,
But-
suffer the consequences later.
Well, you see, if I had a driver's license when I was a teenager, then I probably wouldn't have either. I didn't start driving until I was an adult, so.
Where are you going? I'd be already out the door in the car running.
All right, let's move on here. Verse 5. People who are at ease mock those in trouble. They give a push to people who are stumbling. All right. Is that true?
Sometimes.
I think oftentimes. If your life is easy, you got a job, you got a nice house, you got your bills paid for, you don't really struggle. Do you relate to those who do struggle?
In my situation, I can because I have been one that struggled before.
Right. But most people quit relating. Once they get to that easy life, they tend to forget that they struggled at some point and what it was like to struggle.
But even though I feel like me and Melissa's got an easy life, we both got good jobs and very, very few bills. But even though we still struggle sometimes.
Yeah, well, everybody does. Got a friend of mine says, you know, sometimes you're on top of the hill, sometimes you're at the bottom, but over the course of your life, guess what? It all washes out evenly. And you got to remember that, because you may be at the bottom today, but in a year from now, you might be on top of the hill again. The
I
trick,
always try to put myself in someone else's shoes.
the trick is to do that, to relate to what they're suffering. If we don't relate to their suffering, we have no empathy. And we get kind of cold-hearted at that point. That's when you see people, and I won't mention names, people I know that will say things like, well, if they get a job, they wouldn't be in that situation. Well, how do you know they don't have a job?
There's usually more reasons why they ain't got a job than just superficial reasons.
There are. Sometimes they have a job and still don't make enough money and are struggling. Or they're in an abusive relationship and like, well, if they just leave, it'll all be okay. Where are they gonna go? You know, we get cold when we get that easy life and we forget that things are not as easy at the other end. Job's friends are a little cold here. They're not being empathetic. They're not trying to look at it from his perspective. They're just telling him what he needs to do. If you went and got a job, God wouldn't be mad at you and you'd be living good. You know, it's important that we take the time to understand where people are at and where they're coming from. Yeah, there's lazy people out there. Yeah, there's disobedient people out there. And sometimes they do get what's coming to them. Does that mean we shouldn't have empathy for them? It's sometimes hard to.
Don't have too much.
Don't have too much, yeah. You can have some, but not so much that you're helping them do bad things. You know, I have empathy with someone to try to help them get out of that situation. Or I have too much empathy and drive them deeper in that situation.
Or you drive yourself.
Or drive yourself, yeah. So you gotta balance it, you know, you gotta have wisdom. But we shouldn't ever become so cold, we become uncaring. And I think that's what Job's feeling. His friends don't really care about his situation, what's true. They're only seeing what they see and knowing what they know, and that's all they get. look at the next part there. But robbers are left in peace, and those who provoke God live in safety. Though God keeps them in his power. How did yours read that verse? 5?
The tents,
6?
the tents of robbers are safe, and those who trouble God are secure. God holds them in his hands.
He's bitter.
So, yeah, it is bitter. But is it true?
Sometimes.
Does God hold robbers in his hands? Yeah.
Yeah, because he holds everyone.
Why? They're wicked and evil. Why would he do that?
Because they're still his kids.
So does that mean that God holds rioters and looters in his hands? I see some nods, yeah. It's hard to have to admit that, but yeah.
He's always hoping for better.
So what?
He's always hoping for better.
There's always a chance that, that robber or looter today becomes on fire for God tomorrow. But we don't see that far in advance, so we don't know. It's hard for us not to make judgment calls. Job's friends are making a lot of judgment calls.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, they are. We make a lot of judgment calls. We watch something on YouTube, on Facebook, on TV, and we make judgment calls. And part of the lesson here, Job's telling us is don't do that. What you see may not be all there is to see. All right, we're gonna move on. Hit the next part there.
But ask the animals, and they will instruct you. Ask the birds of the sky, and they will tell you. Or speak to the earth, and it will instruct you. Let the fish of the sea inform you. Which of all these does not know that the hand of the Lord has done this? The life of everything living, the life of every living thing is in his hands, as well as the breath of all mankind. Doesn't the ear taste words as the palate tastes food? Wisdom is found with the elderly, and understanding comes with long life.
Mine phrases that middle part slightly differently.
I know, but the rest of it was kind of the same as hers.
Yeah.
So, to me, I don't know, when stuff is like that, on two different things, it's something to really pay attention to.
Yeah,
Because that's
yeah.
the word.
The only difference here was, I think, verse 9. For they all know, speaking of animals, that my disaster has come from the hand of the Lord. So we see from, at least from the NLT version, and I think even from yours, that he's still assuming God's doing this to him. Now, is God doing this to him?
God's allowing it.
Yeah.
So God's doing this to him.
Yeah.
In a sense. Because God is in control. God gave Satan the power to do this to Job, or the permission, I should say. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So in that sense, God is in control. God could have said, nope, I'm not going to do this to Job. But God's in control. So why does he use the animals here? What's so special about the animals?
Because animals, and I don't mean this the way it's going to sound, but animals aren't as smart as humans are.
Uh-huh.
So I think he's using it in a sense of,
Even animals know.
yeah.
Yeah,
The animals know.
I think that's part of it. That the animals are not as smart as humans. They don't think like we do, but even they know that God is in control.
Mhm.
But at the same time, the animals also know that God's in control because they have to rely on God
For their own needs.
for their own needs. Yeah.
And I'm not being defensive, but maybe it's he's knowing that they're even smarter. Like, they're supposed to be more lowly, but even they get it.
Yeah.
Our animals have more empathy.
There's a lot of things he could
I
be
don't think
saying.
animals have sin.
Huh?
I don't think animals have sin.
They don't.
Yeah,
That we know
no.
of.
So,
They do some instinctual.
they're like we was before they ate the apple.
They are, yeah, they're very instinctual, they're very relied
That's,
upon
I think,
God.
the way we were supposed to be.
Right, yeah, that is, we were made, we are animals. We forget we are animals. We're just a higher branch of animals.
Turn on a news station and
Well, this is true.
and
yeah.
you'll be reminded.
We're supposed to be a higher branch of animals than most. But yeah, we are animals, just like the birds of the air, the fish of the sea, the beasts that walk the fields. We're not that
That'd be
different.
us.
So what?
These didn't want the fields.
Yeah. And you know, Job's saying, they even know that this is happening to me because of God. Now, is he blaming God here?
I wouldn't say he's blaming him. I'm just saying he's giving him credit.
For
He's saying
disaster?
that God's allowing it to happen.
Sounds like he's blaming me. He's already said, I'm blameless. I haven't done anything wrong. But God, for they all know that my disaster has come from the hand of the Lord. Sounds like blame to me.
At least he's trying to figure it out. He's trying to like.
He's trying.
He's trying to grasp at straws and trying,
And then another thing is,
What I think
the only thing is that God's the only powerful one to do that, so.
Well, yes, this is true. He is acknowledging God's majesty, his sovereignty, and his power.
Yeah, goes along with that. What I was gonna say was, you know, that when I think of blame, I think of,
The blame game.
well, like being ill and lashing out and everything. I don't think he's got to that point with God yet.
But do you think he's getting close?
Well, yeah, he's getting close.
yeah, his heart is bitterer.
Well, I mean, you know, everything that he's gone through, and then 3 of his closest friends are basically,
Betrayed him?
well, yeah. I
In a
mean,
sense,
in a
yeah.
sense, yeah. I mean, they've betrayed him and everything. So I mean, yeah, he's
Because
he's
they
close.
should know his character.
They should know his character and know that he
Yeah.
hasn't done anything. You're right. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever had something happen to you that made you want to blame God?
I think
Yeah.
they just
I'd say
people, we
yeah.
all. I think as you know, most people we blame God when things aren't going well.
Yeah.
But if you
Plenty
understand,
of times I've said that.
if you understand how God works, then you know, like you can't be blamed if that makes sense.
Yeah, but as a people, as a whole,
Yeah.
that's the first thing you do.
Why?
It's just the way we're hardwired, I guess, that we blame, always push the blame
But
to
then go back to our
somewhere else.
sinful nature.
I think part of it is because we are hardwired to understand God is the sovereign and is in control. So therefore, if this is happening to us,
And God's in control.
God's in control, then it must be because of God, which is, I think, where Job's at. Job's like, I'm not in control of this because I didn't do anything that I can pinpoint. God's in control, he's sovereign, so this must be from God.
I don't think it has to do with his sovereignty.
Okay.
Because I think that if you legitimately understand the sovereignty of God, then you would understand that things happen for a reason. I think it's because growing up we were always taught God is good, God is good, God is good. Well, if God is so good, why is he allowing this to happen?
That is a lot of atheist arguments.
Why? Okay, if God is so good, why is God allowing this to happen?
Because God has faith in him.
Because
God
he's got a wager going with Satan right now.
So we're a $500 bet.
Well, I
We're
think
not, I don't think God would have that much faith in us.
as a rule, a lot of people aren't self-reflective, which Job is actually.
Yeah.
But again, he's missing the whole boat where he's not thinking about the evil, negative
Right, yeah.
side.
Yeah, he's only looking at one side.
Which that's, I guess some people don't think about that either when they're in a bad circumstance.
I went to church a few years back with a couple that lost both of their twins right after they were born. that God's fault? Was it the couple's fault?
Don't know.
Whose fault was it?
Don't know.
Sometimes there is, I don't know, sometimes.
You want to say sometimes there's no fault, but
Yeah.
if God is in control,
And that's where the whole spectrum, we don't understand what was awaiting those children.
this is true. I can tell you that what awaited the couple was they have other children now and they've gone off into the mission field. Because they survived that ordeal, they have a great testimony for God.
That's what I'm saying, a lot of people that I know that have lost someone dear to them, even in my personal experience, it helps other people grow, not just one person is
Right.
affected by it, there's like a group of people that is affected by it that you wouldn't even think.
But if you're in that situation and you just lost your children, would it not be natural to blame God if you were a God-fearing
yeah.
person?
It was,
Because you didn't do it. You know you didn't do anything.
what is the,
Yeah,
But,
on another hand, it'd also be good to, all right, now what you want me to do, or
Yeah.
where am I going now? You
And-
know, or what's this gonna turn into?
This is a question. I bring this up because this is a question atheists always, you're right.
Yeah.
Atheists use
Easier
this.
said than done.
You know, if God's in control, why does bad things happen? Why do innocent people die? Let's say God was in control. You know,
It's not our job to try to explain why God allows things to happen. I mean,
what is our job?
Praise Christ.
To tell what's happened to us.
But here's another thing, not to be all corny, but like the whole thing where there's not, you can't have good without evil. You can't, there's always kind of like an opposite. So
Well,
there's God and there's the devil.
This is true, but 2 little newborn babies dying isn't necessarily caused by evil.
But as I think Melissa was saying, it also could be like a lesson for something else to
Could
come
be.
out of it.
How about this? You're kind of right. Is the question that why did it happen the question we should be asking? Or is it more acceptance that God is sovereign and is in control? And when these things happen, our job is to let our faith say, you know what, God knows what's best.
Yeah, we have to put it in his hands.
you see,
Because-
and that's something that we've got to learn. You know, bad things are going to happen in our life.
Right.
I mean, that just whether you're a Christian or not a Christian, bad things are going to happen in your life.
Right.
We just know that there's a bigger picture at work, and we just have to have faith and trust in God.
But that's hard to do sometimes. You know, think back, my mom died after a week in the hospital suddenly. You know, that's hard to say that's a good thing. But at the same time, had she lived with stage 4 cancer, what would her life have been like? What kind of suffering would she have experienced? You know, I think of Scotty, taken away too young.
yeah.
That wasn't evil. Was that God? You know, it's hard to look at the big picture and say, well, I understand why these things happen. Sometimes you can't understand them, but we do have to accept them
Right.
and trust that there's a reason why they happened. You know, sometimes you can look and say, well, you know, it's evil. You know, there's a drunk driver that ran into somebody and they died. You know, that's evil. Or, you know, if someone's riding and they shoot you, that's evil. You know, there's times when evil comes into play, there's times when it doesn't. And it can be hard. And I think Job's experiencing that right here. It's hard to say, I accept this, I don't like it, but I know God's in control, and my faith says I'll trust it. Because some things are hard. It's hard to do. Because look what he says in verse 10: for the life of every living thing is in his hand, and the breath of every human being. The life and breath of every living thing is in God's hands. We have to figure out how to reconcile that when bad things happen. Got thoughts there, Miss Amanda? You look like you have thoughts.
No, I'm good.
Okay. All right, we'll move on. Read the next 6. I don't know where it stops.
13 through 21.
13 through 21, okay.
Wisdom and strength belong to God. Counsel and understanding are His. Whatever He tears down cannot be rebuilt. Whoever He imprisons cannot be released. When He withholds water, everything dries up, and when He releases it, it destroys the land. True wisdom and power belong to Him. The deceived and the deceiver are His. He leads counselors away barefooted and makes judges go mad. He releases the bonds put on by kings and fastens a belt around their waists. He leads priests away barefoot and overthrows established leaders. He deprives trusted advisors of speech and takes away the elders' good judgment. He pours out contempt on nobles and disarms the strong. Whoo!
Ooh, what? What you got on this one? What you feeling here?
Woo! See that in our world today.
We do, don't we? That's exactly what I was thinking here. I like the first part. He says, true wisdom and power are found in God. Again, he's building God up. He's admitting who God is. Counsel and understanding are His. I think he's acknowledging, I don't understand what's happening to me, but God does.
He just wants to know why.
He just wants to know why. As a man of faith, that's what we're supposed to do, is admit, I don't understand it, but God understands it. Counsel and understanding belong to Him. And if He wants to share it with you, He will. If He doesn't, guess what? He doesn't. And you can't get mad about that.
Nope.
Why can't we get mad about that?
Because maybe we don't need to know.
I was going to say, because we are not entitled to know anything that God is doing.
Well, no, we're not.
We often think we are, though.
Well, yeah.
Yeah,
We're an arrogant bunch.
exactly. And so we think we're entitled to know God's plans when God says, no, you just are entitled to follow said plans. And that can sometimes be very difficult for us puny little humans, because we like to believe we are always in control.
And we like instant gratification.
And we love instant gratification. It's not like, it's love. I want it and I want it now.
Burger King.
Burger King, yeah. Now, I can't even see. I'm blind as a bat, people, in case you didn't know. What He destroys cannot be rebuilt. When He puts someone in prison, there is no escape. That made me think of the country right now. Everyone wants to find a solution to our problems. What if there isn't one? What if the solution is that God's going to tear it down?
He's finally had enough.
Hmm?
He's finally had enough.
Yeah, He's finally had enough. And if He tears it down, we can't rebuild it. He can.
Well, He's just gonna pit us against
Look at
ourselves.
Israel.
He's gonna let us do what we normally do, destroy.
Right. Yeah, look at Israel. Israel was wiped out for thousands of years, and He rebuilt it. So, but no one else could do it but God in God's time. If our time in the United States has come to an end, we simply have to accept that and deal with it. Not saying it has, but it could be.
But there's also, I know some people would fight me on this, but if we all sit down, and I know I'm a hippie, but just be peaceful and pray, everybody, and think about this and contemplate this and just treat people better versus
Well,
being,
if everybody would, we wouldn't have this problem to
Yeah.
begin with.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is, most people don't do that anymore.
but humans just know to fight. Like, come on, I was talking with actually a couple friends on 2 different days about this. I think it's sad, and I'm gonna be mean and judgmental to our people, which we're not supposed to be, but it's pathetic that we still operate this way after hundreds and hundreds of years. It's like, come on, humans, let's evolve and get more peaceful and respect each other more. Like,
But
when are we gonna learn?
You can't do that outside of God.
Yeah,
that's the problem.
and
The
I guess
further
not
we've gone
everybody's
along in
got
this
God.
experiment called the United States, the more and more we've turned away from God.
Yeah.
Personally, not as a country. You know, you can put prayer back in school tomorrow; it won't make a difference.
Yeah, it has to be in your
You
heart.
know, if it's not, personal for you, it makes no difference. Pass all the laws you want, I don't care. Nothing will change. So don't come at me with that stuff. Until you make a personal commitment to God, nothing changes, and we're seeing that's, was it 94% of the people in America call themselves Christian, and only like 14% go to church? Something like that. It's really low. It's ridiculous. Yeah, we call ourselves a Christian nation. We're not. The people aren't anymore. So as long as that's going on, there will be no changes. And I think maybe God's a little upset about that because people have turned away. I am one of those people that believe God created this nation for a purpose, to show what can be possible. Because you got to remember, if you look back through the history of the world, it was dictator after dictator, empire after empire, and people had no voice.
That's why you have so many people flee here.
Yeah, it is. Throughout our history, they've been coming here because they had the opportunity to be
Heard.
and be heard. Yeah, and we haven't been perfect. We know that, but more perfect than other places. There's always room to grow, and now we see
Lesser
them.
of the two evils.
So what?
Lesser of the two evils.
Sometimes, yeah. But now we're sliding completely away from what God intended. At some point, God will get tired and say, okay, I'll give you over to yourselves. That's his favorite phrase in the Old Testament. He gave them over to their own desires, themselves. When that happens, that says God is turning his back on you, and what happens, happens.
I also think our foundation of this country was pretty dismal, though. I mean, I put a funny meme on Facebook about, you think we were founded on an ancient Indian burial ground or something, or you know what I mean? And we've got this country from stealing, hurting.
Every country came into being that way.
Yeah. Well, okay.
You got to remember.
Yeah.
You got to remember.
I don't know the history of everybody.
You got to remember how the Israelites got Israel. God sent them to take over the land of Canaan,
Yep.
to push all the people out. God can do that.
Yeah.
If God says, go take this land, he can do that. We can't complain about that.
Because that was the land that he promised
It's
Abraham.
land he promised Abraham. Yeah. Now, in our own United States, I don't know that God told them to go shoot Indians or anything else. I don't know. I wasn't there. But I do believe, in the end, God wanted this country as a light.
I'm not gonna say I think God told them to shoot Indians and everything. I think because most of the people that come over here that were Europeans, they come from such a civilized,
Yep.
and they come here and they see they automatically assume the Indians were a threat before they made their intent known.
Which is funny because when
Which
we
is
first
the
came here,
problem with.
when we first came here, the Indians helped us. It was
Yeah.
only later that they became the perceived threat. But anyway, our flaws in humanity came into play at some point. Because we did go along with the Indians in the beginning.
It's where Thanksgiving started.
Right. And it was only later that it became an issue.
Thank you, Indians, because I love me some turkey.
And we could talk all day about greed and all that stuff, but anyway, back to the lesson. If he holds back the rain, the earth becomes a desert. Trust me, I know. If he releases the waters, they flood the earth. Trust me, I know. You can wash away a whole field full of seed if it rains too hard. Yes, strength and wisdom are his. Listen to this. Deceivers and the deceived are both in his power.
There's a lot in this whole section with that whole opposite thing.
Uh-huh.
Like with
There is. Job is a deep man. He's very philosophical here. So both the one who does the deceiving and the one who is deceived are in God's power. Does that bother you?
No,
What?
because we're all God's children.
We are? Does it bother you that he lets deceivers deceive people?
I don't like it, but
I don't like it either, but does it bother us that he lets deceivers deceive people?
No,
Why not?
because he gives us free will.
Yes.
If he keeps deceivers from deceiving people, then he's taking away our free will.
Yeah, absolutely right, yeah. You have to take the good with the bad, or otherwise,
He's given us a choice
That's
whether
why-
to be good or evil.
That's why when we are being deceived, we're supposed to use discernment and
to understand
seek
we're being
out
deceived.
and learn.
Yes. Yes.
Instead of seeing a post on Facebook, sharing it, and saying this is what's happened when you don't know. But anyway.
Exactly, yeah. Which happens a lot.
Oh yeah.
People pass around stuff all the time that they assume is true, but they don't know because they're being deceived.
I shared one earlier today, and I said, "Is this really true?" And somebody told me, "No, that's satire." I said, "Okay," so I deleted it off my page.
Yeah. You know, as I say, we live in the age of deception. Everybody's deceiving everybody nowadays. You know, we have to be careful. But I take a little comfort in knowing God is in control of both the deceiver and the deceived. Because even though he's allowing you to be deceived, that means that he's in control. In the end, the deceiver gets what's coming to him. It may not happen in my lifetime. It may not happen until Judgment Day. But I can rest assured that no matter who deceived me, God's not going to forget what they did. And they will have to answer for it. And I think that's what Job's getting at here. That, you know, because God's in control, it doesn't matter. Everybody will get their justice. All right, where am I at? He leads counselors away, stripped of the good judgment. Wise judges become fools. He removes the royal robes of kings. They are led away with ropes around their waist. Oh, he leads priests away, stripped of status. He overthrows those with long years in power. He silences the trusted advisor and moves the insight of the elders. He pours disgrace upon princes and disarms the strong. I think what Job's describing here is a judgment. But against what?
Against what?
Against what?
Us.
Well, it is us, but no, it's
Well,
not us as a
not
whole.
as a whole, but
Who is he talking about here?
Our leaders.
Those in power. Everyone he mentions here is someone in power. A counselor is in power. A king is in power. A judge is in power. A priest is in power. Those with long years in power are overthrown. Trusted advisors are ones in power. Elders are in power. Princes and the strong are in power. Job saying he brings judgment upon all these people. But why? Go ahead.
Because all leadership comes from God,
Yeah,
and if they're not leading in a godly manner,
they answer to God.
exactly.
Yes, I think that's what he's getting at. You know what happens to most people when they get power?
why people abuse
Here's their
it.
head.
Goes ahead, they abuse it, they become corrupt. They forget why they're in power to begin with, and then it's all about them. Instead of being about, God put me here to serve a purpose, it's, what can I get out of this? I'm not getting what I want out of this, I can get more out of this. And that's the people I think Job's talking about.
You also gotta look too, like a lot of people that are in power don't even know or acknowledge God.
In today's society, they don't at all. You're right. So this is a warning of judgment to those in power. If you know, Job, I think is telling Zophar, and I wonder if maybe, I wish I knew more about Zophar. Is he someone who's in power?
Might be.
Because this warning, remember, this is his response to Zophar.
Well, now, in my
Yeah.
commentary, he says that of the four of them, Job's actually the youngest.
So
So three of them,
Zophar
that's why
maybe-
he says elder.
I did read somewhere that because Zophar spoke last, he would be the more important
Oh, really?
friend.
Huh.
Because they took it in order of like youth and less importance. So Zophar may be a man of, he may be an elder in the church, he may be a man of power, and that's why Job is warning him here. That, you know, God can take away your power just as easily as he took away mine. Blessings. All right, read the last part, we gotta finish up.
Okay. Where am I at? 22. He reveals mysteries from the darkness and brings the deepest darkness into the light. He makes nations great, then destroys them. He enlarges nations, then leads them away. He deprives the world's leaders of reason and makes them wander in a trackless wasteland. They grope around in darkness without light. He makes them stagger like a drunkard.
There you go, that's the United States of America right now.
All right.
Everything Job just said describes everything in our country. He uncovers mysteries hidden in darkness. He brings light to the deepest gloom. He builds up nations and he destroys them. He expands nations and he abandons them. He strips kings of understanding and leaves them wandering in a pathless wasteland. They grope in the darkness without a light. He makes them stagger like drunkards. You look at our political leaders in this country, no one knows what to do, where to go. They're just groping in darkness for anything they grab hold of. All of them. Don't care who they are. It feels like God is abandoning our nation.
Our nation's suspended God.
Well, it has, but it feels like now God is abandoning our nation. And
You know why I think we're going through this?
why?
Because we didn't learn what he was trying to teach us during isolation.
Very good possibility.
And we're fixing to be isolated again.
We are. I agree with that. 2020 is a year that we're supposed to learn things, and we're not learning them very well.
We're
2020 is your
stubborn.
vision.
We're stubborn.
Yeah,
Well, you gotta open your eyes in order to look first.
that's true.
Yeah.
2020 is perfect vision, and we have
Yeah.
not had it this year at all. We are denying everything as real. Think about that.
We need to reflect. Like I say a lot of not so nice things about our country, but I mean, people are so distracted by so many things that really aren't important. Our priorities are completely, I feel, out of check
They are.
in so many ways. We're very gluttonous in so many different ways. Very entitled. Very. It's yeah. So
We are a people that just do not get it. God's trying to get our attention. I have no doubt about that.
Yes.
We're people that don't want to get it. If it doesn't benefit us, we could care less.
We could care less. And that's a horrible attitude to have. As a church, we should never have that attitude.
That's not how I feel, by the way. I'm just saying.
But that is the majority of people. You know,
I mean, it is. Look at. Anyway, I ain't going.
I know, look,
I ain't
But
going.
people don't, I mean, people really don't get
Not on
it, because
video.
if they did have a closer relationship to God and were more peaceful, they will be happier. They just don't know it because they're so distracted by everything.
we are distracted by everything.
Mhm.
And we look for deception. I'm just gonna say it.
Yeah.
As a
Some
people,
like it.
we look for deception. Because we like believing that which is not true.
And we feel like if we have that freedom to deceive, and I'm not one of those, that we're free and we're this and we're getting away with something new, that's a bonus, that we got a little extra something, but that's not really how it is. I mean, that's just my feeling.
I think we're gonna come back and look at this chapter. What are your opinion? Because I wanna look at this last section in about 3 months. When we're about the time we're finishing up Job, I want us to come back and look at this.
It's 22-3.
We can't forget.
Because I think by then, okay,
You gotta click it, David. It's a pencil.
oh.
No, on the front. That
What
little
is
white
it?
button
I
right
thought it
there.
was a pen.
It's a high-tech pencil.
Okay.
I do wanna read this out of my commentary though.
Okay, go ahead.
Alright, it says, or Warren says,
Yeah.
but God is sovereign over nations as well as individuals. He can enlarge a nation or destroy it, or give it freedom or bondage. All he has to do is take wisdom away from the leaders, and the nation's destruction is sure. Proud people don't like to hear this message. Ever since the city of Enoch and the Tower of Babel, mankind has been trying to build and manage things without God, and the end has always been failure and judgment.
Yep.
Makes me think of Israel.
Uh-huh. If God will destroy his own people, his own nation, well, you're a fool if you believe he won't take out America. Because he will. We're not that special. And, you know, we need to learn that. I don't think we will. And I think we as the church, as God's people, are going to have to learn how to deal with what's happening and what our role and place is in this new America. Whatever that looks like.
Well, and I know it sounds horrible, just like I said, I had a gentleman come into work from Trinidad to spread the gospel to the United States. And yet, we always holler how we're doing missions all over the world. The world's coming here.
Yeah.
Think about that for just a little bit.
Yeah. We are on the decline, religiously, spiritually.
I hate to say it, but negativity always gets a whole lot more attention, especially in the media.
It does.
And, I mean, here's my hypothetical proposition. If all of us Christians and just other good people, like genuinely good people, like yeah, maybe we are, I mean, I know this is kind of counterintuitive or still saying something, oh, sorry, my brain's still not in here, but anyway, what I'm saying is, maybe we should band together in a peaceful way. You know, as many people, because we have all these angry people out there, then maybe we should have get the masses to be more peaceful, you know. I know that sounds
There are
kinda,
groups out there trying that, but the problem is
For every good deed, there's 20 bad deeds.
nah, I mean, I know how good
your other people are overwhelming. I'll put
Yeah.
it that way.
You know why all of our missionaries go overseas? Because we're more accepted over there than we are in our own country.
I can see that.
Yeah.
Sad.
Well, and not even overseas. A lot of times we'll go to different states, and you know, and when you ask people, why do you do this? Why not try to clean out your own backyard first?
Because nobody listens. Your neighbors don't like you.
Then what type of example are we actually setting for Christ?
It's a good question.
Because your neighbors know who you are.
Yes, they do.
Say you go out of state, and you put on a mask.
Yep. This is the problem we have in the church that we have to deal with. Like I said, we have to find our own place now. In an abandoned country, because I do think God is abandoning this country. Not completely, but enough. I don't think he will ever abandon his people. But I do think there are times when God abandons a country.
Well, we abuse our free will.
Sometimes
And again,
we do.
with animals, they don't steal, they don't do stupid stuff, they're not sneaky, they're not, you know, they do what they need to do to survive, but they don't do something out of the way to make
Right.
another animal angry or hurt or anything like that. Like, our free will is a gift, but
It
it
is a gift that's
so
also a
abused,
detriment.
it's so
at times.
abused.
Yes, you can abuse anything. That's why we have all those warnings against, you know, greed and lying and murder and I forget all of them. The Apostle Paul and Peter and James wrote about in the New Testament, but they're all there for a reason because those are the things that interfere with free will. That's the abuse of the free will. And we're bad about that, and God knows it. And he warned us. We can't say we weren't warned.
Well, I mean, if you look at Israel's time in Egypt when they were
Mm-hmm.
slaves,
Yeah. They actually
God-
didn't go there as slaves, remember, they went there because of a famine.
They went there.
They went there to get
during
food.
Joseph's time.
They only became slaves later.
Later, when the new Pharaoh, who never heard of Joseph,
Right.
realized their numbers were so much more than the Egyptians. That's when he started killing the babies and everything. But anyway, God didn't do anything for them until his people basically turned back to him.
Yes.
Because they had already started adopting the idols
Yep.
and gods of Egypt and everything. But he didn't reach out to them until they cried out to him. I don't
Right.
think God's going to do anything for us.
I don't think so
until
either.
the lost cry out to him. I think it's more than just those of us that, are Christian and that are trying to follow him and everything. I think it's going to be
Yeah.
a lot more.
I
It
would
just
agree
does.
with you on that,
There's been a lot of disobedience.
There has been a lot. Let me follow up on that for
Yeah.
a moment. Remember, the people of Israel went to Egypt because of a famine. Okay? Not much different than a COVID-19. Something that came upon the people, they had no control over it, they were suffering. And what started out as a good thing eventually entrapped them. We have a lesson to learn there. Do you know what that lesson is?
History always repeats itself.
Well, not that lesson. That's not the one I was thinking of. We need to be careful that we don't just react to situations. Because the Israelites reacted. Had they stayed in Israel and went and brought food from Egypt to Israel, they may not have ever been enslaved. But because they all basically went to Egypt,
Well, and they did that because Joseph brought his family there.
well, his
to be with
family
him.
wasn't the whole nation.
Well, I understand that, David, but I'm
But
just
this was-
saying.
Yeah,
But Israel was named after Jacob, so I mean,
right.
like if your nation is named after somebody and he's going to move over here, what are you going to do?
Well,
You
yeah.
going to follow right along?
I get that, but that's, I think they were reacting to, oh, we're all starving, we gotta go.
Well, it's like
Yeah.
the Great Depression. When the Great Depression hit, people literally left the East Coast
Yeah.
and went to the West Coast hunting jobs.
Yeah.
Which if they just hunkered down, they would have survived here.
We often let our emotions control things. Why didn't the Israelites during their famine call out to God? Why didn't they trust God more?
Yeah.
When you go back and look at the story, I don't think you're going to see that they ever called out to God for help during the famine. They just went to Israel went to Egypt to see if they could get food and found Joseph.
We need to slow down, pray, and get solutions.
Yeah, we need to slow down and pray, not react, not live emotionally by what's going on.
But, now I will, for lack of better words, defend, I'd say at least the protesters, not the rioters, but I understand that our system is corrupt. I
Sure it is.
understand that if we were peaceful and
We
this
all-
and
we all-
that there is such a corrupt system that,
We all know the problems. Anyone who's honest with themselves knows the truth. But that doesn't mean we should react with emotion and just not think of things through.
and even if the legal system and the government is corrupt, at least we as people could stand up and we could be less corrupt and we could be more
Yeah, it
respectful.
all has to start here. Until it starts here, don't matter about anything else. We have a lot of lessons to learn from the Bible if we would look at them and think about them. That's all I got to say tonight. Feel good?
I'm great.
All right, let's pray. Lord God, we thank you for your word tonight. We thank you for the reminders, Lord, that you are in control. That you have all the power, all the wisdom, all the knowledge, the counsel. There's nothing we can do that you can't undo. There's no great plans we can make that you can't tear down. There's no civilizations we can build up that you can't wipe away. And that's simply because we're not you. And if we want to move forward and solve problems, we're going to have to learn to turn to you and find out what it is you want us to do, what actions you want us to take, how you want us to live. You've given us so many instructions right here. But I'm afraid most of us never take the time to open the book to even begin to learn what they are. You know, I do pray for this country because we are at a turning point. There's definitely injustice in this country, in this world. And we know, Lord, that you are a God of justice and that people who are treated unjustly will eventually receive their justice one way or the other. That's who you are. But Lord, we also need to make a stand within ourselves to follow you and to trust you and to turn to you and quit trying to do it our own way. Quit believing we have any control whatsoever. Quit believing that we can fix what's broken. Quit believing that we know what's best. Because that's arrogance. And arrogance has no place in godliness. I don't know what tomorrow holds for our country. But Lord, I do know that you're going to be with each and every one of us, your people, and you're going to walk us through it, and you're going to be there with us. And because of that, Lord, we will come out the other side. We don't have to worry. We may have to adapt. And I pray, Lord, that you give us the strength to do that if that's necessary. We're going to trust you, we're going to seek you, and we're going to follow you. It is in the holy name of Jesus I do pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right, we'll see y'all on Sunday.